Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome. We're War Torn Creative, specifically. I'm Tom, or F. Dot, and I'm joined here by my buddy Jared. And this time we're getting into specifics about a faction. We like to call this segment Faction Focus, and this time we're honing in on one of Jared's favorites, the Space Marines.
Yes, the Adeptus Astartes.
There you go.
Space Marines, I immediately picked them up at the very beginning. I like them because they're just like the core of 40K.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everywhere you see them. A lot of people don't like that much. They got a lot of attention, but I like the big, heavily armored dudes just trudging through with like zealots, conviction.
Right.
And I also like how tactical they are.
They're also kind of like the quintessential 40K unit, right?
Yeah.
If you're kind of around the shop playing cards or other things and you kind of see the 40K stuff going on, you're like, oh, Space Marines. Yeah, I know what those guys do, right? And so it's easy to kind of jump in and look at them and kind of like them from afar, but once you get down to the nitty gritty, there's a lot of complications there, which are really cool.
Yes.
So before we get into those complications, let me ask you the plain personal question. What really drew you to the Space Marines?
I like that what they are.
Right.
They are, because I used to be a big Halo fan.
I feel that. Okay.
So the whole Spartan program and all that stuff, turning away some humanity to become something greater in order to fight this great evil that is at the shores of the Imperium in the 40K sense. That's what really drew me to it, and like you get to see that a lot on the tabletop. You have these big, especially now in 8th edition with the Primaris Marines, you got these big, grandiose units and models that are like dynamic, and they have a lot of like, the army is like one big Swiss Army knife, and like they have like all these, which is why I kind of like err towards more Ultramarines. In the book sense, I like their whole like theoretical to practical, where they just deliberate problems and figure out practical solutions to them, and they kind of strictly adhere to that. Plus, I like the Romanesque motif of the Ultramarines.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cool things going on there, and you know that speak to kind of, it's interesting. You called them the Swiss Army knife. There's a lot of cool aspects there that kind of speak to the Vorthos in you, and then also the Timmy. Big units are kind of neat.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we can see with the Space Marines. And so let's start, not necessarily with the big in stature, but the units that do a lot of the business, right? We're talking about the command units.
Yes. Those that lead from the front.
Yep.
Well, in this case, in 8th edition, amongst the many.
Movement's important, remember.
Yes. So one of the units, like I like the changes that they've made to the captain. I like overall HQ's got a fantastic buff where they have this more aura based, so that they have to be in it and around each other and providing these buffs. Captains in general provide rerolling ones to hit, and you see it a lot with like the core like leader unit, like captains. Guilliman has a insanely strong one, which is rerolling hits and wounds.
Both? Wow.
Yeah, he's a Primarch of the Ultramarines. He's like the son, one of the sons of the Emperor himself. And then that combines well with like in the Dark Imperium starter, we have the lieutenants that join the captain. That is another great force multiplier because they provide a 6-inch buff that is rerolling wound rolls of 1.
Which is pretty big.
Yeah, and when you have that synergy with the captain and his lieutenant, because if you want to go like with like a nice fluffy lift, he always has his command retinue of like him and his lieutenants, and then you have your sergeants and the other units and things like that. But having that synergy of being able to roll hits of 1 and wounds of 1 really ups the firepower of any unit that they're nearby.
And that's also really interesting because that becomes then you start looking at the combination of units instead of just, hey, this model's really strong and expensive, so I'm going to stick them right here. You really start to get into the sort of the army building and got to find the intricacies between those synergies, like you said.
Yes, I'm really happy that that's the changes that they've made.
Yeah.
Because most people used to just take captains, slap the dude on the bike, give him a power fist and a shield eternal or a storm shield, and just throw him at the big meatiest thing and punch it to death.
Just go zooming.
While everybody else is just kind of chilling in rhinos. I didn't like that in the long run. I like this new format where they are all going together as an army, and he's just issuing out orders, making everybody re-rolling hits of 1. That's what it feels like. He's
yeah, and from the fantasy perspective, that just feels better. Because, I mean, listen, players myself included, we all want to win. We're going to play to win. And even if, like, you know, it doesn't seem right, yeah, I'm just going to shove the big guy out and everybody. But now it's actually you're playing to what feels like should be happening in the war.
Yes, and I'm really happy with how it's turned out. And other command units that I've seen that they've rolled out, the Ancient. These are elite slots, but they used to be part of a command squad in 7th edition, and a lot of people are probably repurposing them that way. The Ancient is the banner bearer of the army. You know, he's the guy that keeps the morale going and motivates and inspires everybody else around him to fight. And that is represented through this ability that he has, in which any model that dies within range of him, you get to roll a dice. On a 4+, that model takes a final surge of effort for the Emperor kind of thing.
Exactly.
And he gets to do a shooting attack or a melee attack if he was in combat. And that's really potent when you start bringing in the Ancient with the Captain and with the Lieutenant. And if you throw another little apothecary in there, you get some fun little shenanigans with the overall durability of the army and the force multiplied power of the army.
Yeah, it's just a lot of interactions that allowed you to find different rerolls or just reduction in some of the damage and the wounds that you kind of get. I always picture sort of like the crossing of the Delaware, right?
Yeah.
And you just get the giant flag guy, and you know everybody's sort of beefed up to go. That's kind of what I think about when I see that.
Yeah, that's what I envisioned. Like everybody's the command units are in it in the front line, leading with their fellow Space Marines, their brothers.
Yeah, I feel like if they were orcs, it'd be a giant drum guy, right? Just something about like big noise and bringing everything together.
I'd love to see something like that for orcs.
That'd be pretty fun. The command units are neat, and then we move on to some of the other units. We went big. Let's go really small, but still big impact. Scouts.
Scouts, yes. Scouts are one of the troop choices, as everybody knows. But those of you who don't know, they are a troop choice. So they're kind of a critical choice that you have to make when building your army legally in matched play. Scouts are different now. Their role is the same, where they can infiltrate and be advanced units to take objectives or be like a little bait unit, things like that. But they also bring about this new factor to deal with characters, which is sniping. Okay. Their sniper rifles in 7th edition were just like, oh, I just wound you always on this, and sometimes it hurts really bad. Now, for sniper rifles, for a lot of armies and scouts that can take it included, allows you to shoot at characters, because in 8th edition you can't shoot at characters if there's other units closer to you, which is thematic. I like that because it's really thematic and fitting, because you have these guys, you have this unit of scouts that are looking out and taking out the officer units in your opposing army. And I think the sniper rifles, they look like bolter profiles, but on a wound roll of a 6, it's an additional mortal wound. Oh, wow. Which means you can't save that wound on top of the wound that you suffer.
You know, it's kind of interesting, again, going along with sort of the command units that we were talking about. It just, again, it feels like it's just more, I don't want to say realistic, because of how, but just that's how
it's fitting.
It's fitting. It would have worked. Everybody's going to shoot to the closest guy, but if I've got my sniper rifle, I can choose the key target. Yeah. I really like how that works.
This is the counter answer to the power that are the command units. Yeah. You're like, okay, he's got command units too. I can deal with these. And actually, I at some point, I would like to try a 10-man scout squad that infiltrate into a nice, advantageous position, like on top of a bastion with sniper rifles, because that's 10 shots, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s against most character units, and then on 6s, it's an additional mortal wound.
But at the same time, there's a downside of the scouts, right?
Yeah, they're definitely, they're not nearly as durable.
Exactly.
They're squishier. They're not that great in the fist fight if you just outfit them with the sniper rifle. And then but if you put them in cover and you give them a nice camo cloak, they get +2 to their benefit, which I like a lot for 8th edition, because cover changed all across the board. Right. Where it's like if you're wholly within it, you get +1. Camo cloak, additional +1. So these guys with a 4-up armor save are now sitting in there still with a 2-up armor save, like the rest of their power armored buddies who are also in cover.
And, you know, like we were talking about, everything has an Achilles heel. You need the units to really supplement those scouts, because if somebody just rolls up on a bunch of scouts, well, they got a sniper rifle and nothing else. So you've got your scouts in board. You know, let's who do you want to pair the scouts with? How do you protect those characters?
Protecting those characters, it's kind of a hard task if you push them far forward. I'd like to generally take them in a position where the enemy kind of takes that time to deal with those guys, that's wasted resources and
okay.
benefits the rest of the army, which comes to the other core that I always want to bring on top of that is the tactical marines.
Right.
And the tactical marines are the 8th edition made them so much better. Points wise, they went down. They are now 13 points per model. They used to be 14,
yeah.
so now it's base
One
6.
each.
Yeah, it's 65 points for 5, which is the base minimum. A lot of the weapons changed, obviously, and a lot of the point values kind of shifted around a bit. But in the end, they're a little more wieldy to bring if you load them out, if you kit them out completely, which is what you'll want to do. Because tactical is the way, 8th edition now, you get to allocate all your shots.
Right.
And go whichever you want. Like, these bolter guys are going to take out these Hormagaunts. I got a missile launcher who's going to take a crack missile to that Carnifex. And this guy with the flamer is going to attack this other unit of Termagants that are right next to me. And being able to take all those options in a tactical squad, in a 10-man tactical squad, you can take a special and a heavy, lets you be able to make those decisions. And that tactical unit, tactical squad, a Marine defines how very much a Swiss Army knife that Space Marines are.
You have the precision at that point instead of just coming out here. Although some characters actually literally have a shotgun, it's more surgical, right?
Yeah.
So you're able to. I mean, when you're looking at some supporting units, it's very much about very close proximity, and you can sort of, for lack of a better term, sort of snipe out the individual units and cut off players from their support units. So tactical Marines are a really big deal.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely. A lot of people used to field them in minimum squads of 5 dudes, which only lets them take 1 special or 1 heavy. But I'm feeling more inclined to like running these guys as like 10-man chunk units because that's 10 wounds, and if they're in cover with a 2-up armor save, it's really good. And being able to just dish out these different kinds of shots at different units allows them to really optimize their combat effectiveness.
And so how durable are these characters? Are they? They're obviously not as they're squishiest, but they're also not a giant tank. So
yeah, they're more than human, more than man because of all of their training and things like that. So they're sitting, as always, with the strength 4, toughness 4, so slightly above average. But as we come to find, that becomes like the measuring standard for a lot of armies.
Yeah.
In the 40K balancing. Space Marines, they always go Space Marine, standard. That's the standard.
Yeah, I mean, that's the poster boy, right?
Yeah, he's the poster boy, and from which all should be measured from, supposedly. And we see that a lot. Like, Guardsmen are slightly weaker. You know, they shoot slightly worse. You know, Eldar are faster.
Sure.
Because they're thematically faster than Space Marines. So their mobility is higher, or they have more attacks and things like that. But I like that's again, it's another reason why I pick Space Marines, because whenever I'm playing like a game where it's like an RPG or like an MMO, I'm a pretty standard guy. I pick the warrior.
Right, okay.
And just, you know, sword and board it and just get in it. Nothing too fancy, you know, nothing too complicated. Just give me a big gun or a big weapon and let me crunch things.
Yeah, and you know, talking about big, I think we have time for really one more unit when it comes down to the faction focus. And let's go big. Razorback. I mean, that's a vehicle.
So yes, we actually had a match about using one of these guys. Transport in general are going to be really critical for deployment, and I want to get more into that in one of our from the Strategium. You almost got me. Dang. Razorback, super cost effective. 65 points base.
That's it?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's cheaper than the Rhino base, and then you slap a twin heavy weapon on it. In this case, I slapped a twin las cannon, which is only 50 points. And because it's 65 base, that puts it at 115. Compared to 7th edition, that was a 40-point jump.
Oh, wow.
So it is significant. But on the same token, vehicles got more durable. You can put whatever you want into the vehicle as long as it respects the capacities and other restrictions.
Exactly.
It's way more mobile. It can move 12 flat out and just worry about only the -1 to shoot penalty for the heavy weapon. And then it's just got 10 wounds and it's toughness 7. It's a really beefy unit that I would always take. I used to take it a lot in 6th edition, and I'm going to be taking it a lot in 8th edition because I really enjoy it. It's just like a very quick, mobile little tank. like a light tank, and it really did the job well when I last used them. And I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to take it, especially even with just the twin heavy bolter, which is going to be 6 shots at strength 5 -1, 1 damage.
I mean, you personally value a lot of the movement specifically. Is that Jared, or is that the new meta?
I think, well, movement has always been really core in 8th edition, in 40K.
Right.
Now I've just been calling it 8th edition amongst us. But in 40K, yeah, mobility is really key, especially since Maelstrom has taken a staple hold on how people play, matched play.
Yeah.
And you see it a lot in tournament settings and things like that. You got to get one of those 6 objectives. You know, you got to achieve this, you got to achieve that every turn. And being able to get around the board rather quickly is critical. And I think like things like transports like the Razorback, even just by itself, not even dudes in it, just zipping over and getting something is pretty core here.
Yeah, you can couple the Razorback, whether it's by itself and the scouts that we were talking about earlier, who can sort of do their thing pushing forward and sort of play a bunch of decoy.
Yeah.
Kind of decoy
Oh
strategy.
yeah, just like you have the scout unit over here with maybe like some shotguns, you know, because they get a strength 4, no AP or anything, but they get +1 strength at half range. If they infiltrate those dudes like behind enemy lines and getting up near the critical units, that's a nice cheap distraction unit.
Yeah.
You know, that'll be like, hey, I got to turn these guys around to deal with this problem, or he's going to snipe my commissar or something like that. You know.
And then so you can have, you know, the scouts pushing here, so you're kind of infiltrating, and then your Razorback coming, and everything's moving so fast that your opponent next turn has to kind of go, all right, well, there's
I have
multiple.
options here.
Yeah, what's the real threat?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the fun of the Space Marines, that like kind of everything's a threat, but which is the biggest threat is kind of the big deal.
I feel like the biggest threat for anybody playing against Space Marines is just deal with the thing that's going to be force multiplied the most by those character units. So like Centurions, really kitted out tactical squads, Predators are super popular now. We're going to talk about those in the next part. It's just anything that's going to be buffed by all these command units, like because the synergy between all these command units is just so good.
That's the key, is that Space Marines, they can get up in your face and very quickly, but it's not always the most imminent threat that's the biggest threat. A lot of times it has to do with the support units and the command units specifically. So a lot of fun stuff to dive in here on the Space Marines. And honestly, so I asked you before, you know, what sort of got you into the Space Marines, and a lot of times what we see is people will jump into a hobby like 40K and say, oh man, I love Eldar. And then as they play, just realize, you know what, I actually like the play style of something else. So what kept you at Space Marines?
Again, I got into it, that kept me into it was all the lore that was coming out, reading all the books. Like Horus Heresy was a big part of that, because that's Space Marine the book.
Yeah.
You know, that's Legion Marines and like their predecessors and how they came to be. But them being the angels of death, like, and the fact that the irony of them being like worshipped by the more mortal factions in the Imperium is fascinating to me, and the fact that they're at there's not that many of them in the grand scheme of things. I think like in the latest book, they have 1,000 chapters, which are loosely 1,000 dudes in each 10,000. Was it 1,000 or 10,000?
Yeah, about that.
1,000 in a chapter, or 10 companies of 100. Yes, in every chapter, and then you have and there's like 1,000 chapters. So there's not that many. When you're talking about a galaxy-spanning empire, guardsmen outnumber them like 1 billion to 1, and every single one of them, like there's a whole like lore thing about like the Bell of Lost Souls, where like it tolls on like any like important or critical Space Marines that have died, like etch the name on it and ring it and all that stuff. And it's I recommend you reading into like the Bell of Lost Souls. Yeah. The fluff on that, because it's a fantastic read. But yeah, no, it's exaggerated. It's big dudes, big guns. Like they address the problem that I love about 40K is like, I've got a big scary thing that's trying to kill me and my people. I have 2 answers: big gun, or punching it really hard with a really big fist.
Sometimes it is who speaks louder and carries the big stick, right?
Very Teddy Roosevelt, Manifest Destiny.
So that's exactly what we got here with Space Marines. The gold standard, pretty much, of 40K here, and Jared's obviously favorite units. So that's it for us here as far as the Space Marines are concerned. We got a lot more to continue, but that's this time's Faction Focus.